Alexander Blackwood was a man many people admired but few really knew. He was born into one of the richest families in the country. His father had built a huge business empire, and Alexander was supposed to take over one day. From a young age, Alexander showed he was very smart. He could understand complicated business deals better than anyone else, but when it came to feelings, he was different. He kept his heart closed, like a locked box. No one had ever seen Alexander truly open up or be vulnerable. That all changed when he met Elise Hart. Elise was not from a rich or famous family. She was an art teacher in a small town far from the busy city where Alexander lived. She loved simple things, painting, teaching children, and spending quiet afternoons in her garden. She was kind and full of warmth, the kind of person who made everyone around her feel calm and happy. When Alexander first met Elise, he was surprised. She wasn't like anyone he had met before. She didn't care about money or power. She was honest and real. At first, their worlds seemed too different. Alexander's life was full of meetings, expensive parties, and business problems. Elise's life was simple and peaceful. But slowly, Alexander found himself drawn to Elise's kindness and her ability to see the good in everything. Elise saw past Alexander's cold exterior and recognized a gentle heart inside. They started to spend more time together. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Their love grew quietly but deeply. Alexander even began to imagine a life beyond the business world, a life with Elise. They decided to get married, and the news made headlines everywhere. People were curious about how a powerful billionaire like Alexander could fall in love with a humble art teacher. The wedding was planned to be grand and beautiful, a perfect day where everyone would celebrate their love. On the morning of the wedding, the air was filled with excitement. Elise was getting ready, surrounded by friends and family who were happy for her. She wore a simple but elegant white dress that suited her perfectly. Her eyes sparkled with joy and nervousness. Alexander was supposed to be at the chapel early, waiting for her to arrive. The guests had all taken their seats. The flowers were perfect, and the music was soft and sweet. But then something happened that no one expected. Just minutes before Elise walked down the aisle, Alexander disappeared. No one saw where he went. There was no message left behind. It was like he had vanished into thin air. The guests started to whisper nervously. The wedding planner tried to call him, but his phone was switched off. People were confused and worried. Elise was heartbroken and shocked. She stood at the entrance of the chapel, ready to begin a new chapter of her life, only to realize that the man she loved was nowhere to be found. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the minutes passed by, and still, Alexander did not come. The beautiful day turned into a nightmare. Elise felt humiliated in front of everyone she cared about. She had trusted Alexander with her whole heart, and now it felt like he had thrown it away. The news spread quickly. Newspapers and television channels covered the story, making it the biggest scandal of the year. People had many theories. Some said Alexander had cold feet and was too scared to get married. Others thought maybe Elise had done something wrong. Some even believed there might be a secret scandal that forced Alexander to run away. But the truth was more complicated, and no one outside the closest circle knew what really happened. Elise tried to explain her feelings in interviews and to her friends. She said she didn't understand why Alexander left her like that. She felt abandoned and betrayed. But as the weeks passed, she stopped talking to the media. She wanted to escape the pain and the questions. She moved back to her small town, hoping to find peace away from the public eye. Living alone was hard. Every time Elise saw a wedding on TV or heard a romantic song, memories of Alexander came back. She tried to fill the emptiness with work and painting, but the wound in her heart was deep. People in her town were kind, but some whispered about the billionaire who left his bride. Elise became more quiet and reserved. She didn't want to start a new relationship because a part of her still hoped Alexander might come back someday. On the other hand, Alexander's disappearance was not because he wanted to leave Elise or because he was scared. The truth was much darker and more painful. Behind the scenes, Alexander had discovered a dangerous secret inside his own family's company. Someone close to him was involved in illegal activities that could destroy everything his family had built. When he tried to stop them, his life was threatened. He had to make a quick decision to protect not only himself, but also Elise. Alexander knew that if he stayed or tried to explain, it could put Elise in danger. So he made the hardest choice of his life. He left without telling anyone. He disappeared, to keep her safe, even though it broke his heart to do so. During those terrible moments, Alexander's love for Elise was the only thing that kept him strong. But the world didn't know this. They only saw a rich man who ran away from his bride. Alexander lived in silence and hiding, away from the life he once had. He missed Elise every day. He watched from a distance as she tried to move on. It was the loneliest time of his life. Meanwhile, Elise kept struggling to understand what had happened. She refused to believe Alexander was a coward, but the pain of being left alone was too much to bear. She held on to memories of their love, but also to the fear of being hurt again. This part of the story ends with both Alexander and Elise living in two different worlds, separated by pain, fear, and secrets. Alexander's disappearance had changed everything. What was supposed to be a beautiful beginning turned into a long wait for truth, healing, and maybe a chance to love again. After that terrible day when Alexander Blackwood disappeared at the altar, Elise Hart's life changed completely. She had dreamed of a happy marriage, a family, and a life filled with love and trust. But all those dreams seemed to shatter in an instant. For many months, Elise felt lost, confused, and deeply hurt. It was as if the ground beneath her feet had disappeared, leaving her to fall into a dark and lonely place. At first, Elise couldn't face the world. The media kept calling her, asking painful questions, and many people whispered behind her back. The story of the vanished billionaire groom was everywhere, but Elise didn't want to explain herself. She didn't want pity or judgment. So she packed her bags and left the busy city where everything had happened. She returned to her quiet hometown, where people knew her for her kindness and her art, not for the scandal. In her small town, life was peaceful, but not easy. Elise's heart was still heavy with sadness. Every morning she woke up wishing Alexander was still there, that he hadn't left her at the altar. She felt like a part of her had died. But she also knew she had to survive, to find a way to live again. So she focused on the things she loved. Painting became her escape. When she held a brush and mixed colors on a canvas, she felt calm for a little while. Her art expressed what words could not. It was full of pain, hope, and sometimes beauty. Elise also returned to teaching art to children, which gave her a sense of purpose. She loved seeing the smiles of young students, their excitement when they learned something new. Their innocence reminded her that life could still be good. The small-town community welcomed her back with open arms. People who knew her before the wedding stood by her side. But still, some couldn't forget the story of the rich man who had left her. The whispers never fully stopped. In these quiet years, Elise tried to rebuild her life piece by piece. She made new friends and found comfort in family. She even began to open her heart again to the possibility of love, though very slowly and carefully. There was a kind local doctor named Matthew who started showing interest in her. Matthew was gentle and patient. He never pushed Elise, but he was always there when she needed a friend. For the first time in years, Elise allowed herself to imagine a life where she could be happy again, without pain and fear. Despite this new beginning, Elise's heart was still tied to Alexander. She couldn't forget him. She wondered why he had run away. Had he stopped loving her? Had he been scared? She never got any answers, and the silence hurt her more than words ever could. Sometimes, late at night, she would look at the old pictures of their time together, their smiles, the moments they shared. She kept hoping for a message from him, a sign that he was okay. What Elise did not know was that Alexander was living a very different life, far away and in secret. After the wedding day disaster, Alexander had vanished not because he wanted to leave Elise, but because his life was in danger. A dark and dangerous secret inside his family's business had forced him into hiding. Alexander had discovered illegal deals, betrayal, and corruption within his own company. People close to him wanted to silence him. And worse, they wanted to hurt Elise to make sure he stayed quiet. Alexander had no choice but to disappear. He faked his own death for a while, making the world believe he was gone. This was the only way to protect Elise from becoming a target. It was a lonely and frightening time for him, too. He missed Elise every day, but he knew he could not risk her safety. He watched her life from a distance, learning that she had moved back to her hometown and was slowly healing. It was painful to see her trying to move on without him. Alexander had to be careful. He lived quietly in a small town far from the city, using a different name and keeping a low profile. He worked odd jobs and avoided contact with anyone who might recognize him. His luxurious life as a billionaire was gone, replaced by a simple, hidden existence. But no matter where he was or how hard he tried, his thoughts were always with Elise. Meanwhile, Elise's life continued to change. She faced challenges that helped her grow stronger. She learned to trust herself again and to believe that she could survive heartbreak. The kindness of friends and family gave her support when she needed it most. Slowly, she stopped feeling like a victim and started feeling like a survivor. Matthew, the local doctor, became an important part of Elise's life. He was not just a friend, but someone who understood pain and loss because he had experienced it himself. Their relationship was gentle and slow, without pressure or rush. Elise liked the way Matthew made her laugh and feel safe. But deep inside, she knew that Alexander's memory was still alive. Could she really open her heart to someone new when the man she loved had disappeared without explanation? Elise faced this question many times. Sometimes she felt guilty for even thinking about moving on. She worried that Alexander would never forgive her if he found out. Other times, she felt hopeful that maybe one day Alexander would return and they could heal together. But she also knew that life had to go on, with or without him. During these years, Elise also discovered something new about herself. She realized that her worth was not tied to a man or a wedding. She was strong, creative, and full of love to give. She began to dream again, not just about marriage, but about a future where she could be happy and proud of who she was. Her art became more confident and expressive. She held small exhibitions of her paintings, gaining respect and recognition in the local community. But the silence about Alexander's disappearance remained a heavy cloud. Elise's friends encouraged her to move on, but no one could fill the space Alexander left behind. She still wondered if he had truly loved her, or if their whole relationship had been a mistake. Then, one quiet afternoon, Elise received an unexpected letter. It was from Alexander. The letter was short and simple. He wrote that he was alive and that he never stopped thinking about her. He said he had been forced to leave, but hoped one day to explain everything. He asked for her forgiveness and told her he loved her more than ever. The letter shocked Elise. Her heart raced as she read his words again and again. Part of her wanted to run to him immediately, to hold him and never let go, but another part of her was afraid. What if it was a trick? What if she was opening old wounds? What if Alexander could not come back into her life the way she dreamed? Elise spent many nights thinking about the letter. She talked to Matthew and close friends, seeking advice. Some told her to give Alexander a chance. Others warned her to protect her heart. Elise realized that the decision was hers alone. While Elise wrestled with her feelings, Alexander prepared himself for the hardest thing he had ever done: returning to the woman he loved after so many years of silence. He knew he had to be patient and gentle. He could not expect everything to be fixed with just words. He wanted to prove to Elise that he had changed and that his love was true. The years of silence had not made it easier for either of them, but deep down, their hearts still beat for each other. The question was whether time, pain, and distance could be healed by love. Elise had learned to live without Alexander, but she never stopped hoping that one day they might find their way back to each other. In this part of the story, we see how two people, separated by fate and danger, struggle to survive and grow apart while still holding on to the hope of reunion. Elise's journey of healing and self-discovery shows us the strength of the human spirit, while Alexander's secret life in hiding reveals the sacrifices made in the name of love. The years ahead would bring many challenges, but also chances, for forgiveness, trust, and a new beginning, if only they could find each other again. After years of silence, Alexander Blackwood made a decision that would change everything again. The fear, pain, and dangers that had kept him away were slowly fading. The people who had threatened him were dealt with, and the dark secrets inside his family's business were starting to come to light. But the hardest part was yet to come: returning to Elise's heart, the woman he never stopped loving. Alexander's return was not grand or flashy. He didn't arrive in a private jet or announce his presence to the world. Instead, he came quietly to the small town where Elise lived, a place full of memories and meaning. But now Alexander was different. The sharp, confident billionaire was replaced by a man humbled by time and pain. His face showed signs of worry and regret. He wore simple clothes, and he moved slowly, as if carrying the weight of the past on his shoulders. The first time Elise saw him again, she could hardly believe her eyes. It was a cold morning when Alexander walked into the local market, where Elise often bought her groceries. For a moment, she froze. Her heart pounded loudly in her chest. The man she had loved and lost stood there, real and alive, right in front of her. Elise's mind was filled with a mix of emotions: shock, anger, confusion, and a tiny spark of hope. She wanted to run away, but couldn't. Alexander's eyes met hers, filled with sorrow and longing. He didn't say anything at first. The silence between them was heavy with years of unanswered questions. Word spread quickly in the small town. People who had once whispered about Elise's broken heart now watched the man who had left her at the altar come back. Many did not welcome Alexander warmly. To them, he was the arrogant, wealthy man who had caused their beloved Elise so much pain. Gossip started again, and some even warned Elise to stay away from him. But Alexander did not come to fight or argue. He came to make things right, to show Elise that he was still the same man who loved her deeply, but also someone who had changed. He knew it would take time, patience, and hard work to earn her trust again. At first, Elise kept her distance. She didn't want to believe Alexander's sudden return was real or honest. She had built a new life, one where she was safe and free from the pain of the past. She had Matthew, the kind doctor who had helped her heal. Alexander had no right to walk back into her life and expect forgiveness. Still, Alexander found ways to be near her without overwhelming her. He started volunteering at the local school, helping with art classes and community projects. It was a way for him to connect with Elise's world without forcing himself on her. Slowly, through small acts of kindness and patience, he began to show a different side of himself, one that was caring, humble, and sincere. Elise watched Alexander carefully. She saw how he treated others with respect and kindness. She noticed that he wasn't the proud, cold man she had once known. Instead, he seemed broken and real. This surprised her. Could the man who had hurt her so deeply really change? Their conversations were short and careful at first. Alexander didn't ask for forgiveness right away. Instead, he listened, as Elise told him about her life, her struggles, and her fears. He shared parts of his own story, how he had been forced to leave, how much he missed her, and how sorry he was for the pain he caused. Despite the pain and anger, Elise found herself drawn to Alexander's honesty. The walls she had built around her heart began to crack. She wanted to believe him, but she was also scared. What if she opened up again and he disappeared once more? What if the past repeated itself? The town was watching closely. Some people hoped for their reunion, believing true love could overcome anything. Others doubted Alexander's intentions and warned Elise to protect herself. The pressure was intense, but Elise knew the choice was hers alone. Meanwhile, Alexander faced his own struggles. Returning to Elise was not just about winning her back, but proving to himself that he could be the man she deserved. He had lost so much: his safety, his freedom, and the woman he loved. But he was ready to fight for a new beginning, no matter how long it took. One evening, Alexander invited Elise to the art exhibition she had been working on. It was a small event, attended mostly by locals who admired her talent. Alexander arrived quietly, not drawing attention to himself. When Elise saw him there, she felt a mixture of surprise and warmth. It was the first time in years they shared a room together without pain or fear. They spent the evening talking about art, dreams, and the future. Alexander praised Elise's work and encouraged her to keep following her passion. Elise saw that Alexander truly wanted to support her happiness, whether or not that included him. Slowly, their relationship began to heal. Alexander proved through actions, not just words, that he was different. He showed patience when Elise needed space, kindness when she felt vulnerable, and respect when she expressed doubt. But even as hope grew, the past still lingered. Elise had many questions she needed answered before she could fully trust Alexander again. Why had he disappeared without a word? What had really happened that day at the altar? And most importantly, was the danger really over? Alexander knew he had to be honest. He decided to share the secret that had forced him to leave: the betrayal inside his family business, the threats against his life, and the sacrifices he had made to keep Elise safe. It was a difficult confession, but he believed Elise deserved to know the truth. When Alexander told Elise everything, she was stunned. The story was even more complicated and painful than she had imagined. She realized that his disappearance was not an act of cowardice but a brave choice to protect her. Her anger began to soften, replaced by understanding and empathy. The road to forgiveness was not easy. Elise had been hurt deeply, and trusting Alexander again would take time. But she also saw the man he had become, someone willing to fight for love and truth. As they faced the challenges ahead together, Elise and Alexander started to dream of a future where they could heal and rebuild what was lost. The small town, once full of whispers and doubts, began to hope that their love story might still have a happy ending. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, both Elise and Alexander felt that love might be stronger than the pain of the past. After the difficult conversations and the painful truths were shared between Alexander and Elise, something began to change deeply between them. The walls that had separated their hearts for so many years started to crumble, little by little. The love that had been buried under layers of hurt and fear began to find its way back to the surface. But healing after such a long time apart was not easy. Both of them had changed, and the path to forgiveness and trust was full of challenges. Elise, after hearing Alexander's story about the dangerous secrets and threats that had forced him to leave, felt a new understanding. She realized that his disappearance was not a betrayal, but a painful sacrifice. For the first time, she truly saw the pain he had carried alone. This knowledge softened her heart, but also brought new fears. What if those dangers were not completely gone? Could they build a future together when the past still held so many shadows? Alexander was also learning. He understood how much he had hurt Elise, and how much work it would take to earn her trust again. He was patient, and he never pressured her. Instead, he wanted to show his love through actions, small, honest, everyday actions that proved he was there to stay. Alexander began to be a part of Elise's life slowly, respecting her space but always close enough for her to feel safe. Their days together were filled with simple moments that felt precious after years of silence. They went for walks in the park, shared quiet dinners, and talked for hours about their dreams and fears. Alexander even joined Elise in her art classes, helping her teach the children. These moments helped them reconnect, piece by piece, like two broken hearts learning to beat together again. But not everyone in the small town was happy about their reunion. Some people still remembered the scandal and doubted Alexander's intentions. They whispered about how a man with his past could truly change. Elise often heard these rumors and had to remind herself why she had given Alexander a second chance. It was not for what others thought, but because she believed in the man he was becoming. Elise's relationship with Matthew, the kind doctor who had been her friend during Alexander's absence, also became complicated. Matthew understood that Elise's heart was still tied to Alexander, and though he cared deeply for her, he slowly stepped back. He didn't want to stand in the way of something real, but it was painful for him too, losing someone he had hoped to be with. As Alexander and Elise grew closer, they faced new challenges. Alexander's family was still a complicated part of his life. Some members did not trust Elise or believe in Alexander's change. There were old rivalries and tensions that made it difficult for Alexander to fully return to the world he once ruled. But he was determined to fix not only his relationship with Elise, but also the broken ties with his family. Elise, meanwhile, had to confront her own fears and insecurities. Trusting Alexander again meant opening herself up to possible pain. It meant believing in love when the past had shown her so much heartbreak. She often questioned if she was strong enough, if their love could survive the shadows of the past. One important step in their healing was when Alexander invited Elise to meet his family. It was a nervous moment for both of them. Elise wanted to show she was serious about building a future, and Alexander wanted to prove to his family that Elise was the woman he loved. The meeting was tense at first, with many questions and doubts. But slowly, Elise's kindness and honesty won over some of the family members. It was the beginning of mending old wounds and building new bonds. Together, Alexander and Elise also started planning for the future in a way they never had before. They talked about what marriage would mean this time, how it would be different, built on trust, respect, and understanding. They dreamed of a simple wedding, surrounded by people who truly cared for them. The idea of a fresh start without the shadows of the past filled them with hope. Alexander worked hard to rebuild his business honestly, clearing away corruption and making sure that the mistakes of the past would never happen again. Elise supported him, and in return, Alexander encouraged Elise to follow her passion for art. Their partnership became one of mutual respect and support, something neither had fully experienced before. Despite the healing and progress, there were moments of doubt and pain. Old memories would sometimes hurt unexpectedly. An old song, a place they once visited, or even a simple touch could bring tears. But instead of running away, they faced these moments together. They learned to talk openly about their fears and to hold each other through the hard times. One powerful moment came when Elise invited Alexander to her art exhibition. This exhibition was very special because it showed her journey, her pain, her hope, and her growth. Alexander saw the depth of Elise's soul in her paintings and was moved to tears. It was a reminder of how strong and beautiful she was, and how lucky he was to have her back in his life. As they continued to heal, Alexander and Elise also focused on helping others. They started a foundation together to support victims of betrayal and abandonment, wanting to give back and bring hope to those who felt lost like they once had. Their love story became an inspiration to many, a story of forgiveness, courage, and the power of second chances. Through all the ups and downs, one thing remained clear. Their love was real and worth fighting for. They had been through darkness, but together, they found light. Their journey was far from perfect, but it was theirs. A story of two hearts breaking and healing, falling apart and coming back stronger. By the end of this part, Alexander and Elise had not only rediscovered each other but also found a deeper understanding of love. They learned that true love is not about perfection, but about accepting flaws, facing fears, and choosing to stay together no matter what. Their story showed that even when life seems broken beyond repair, hope can shine through. And sometimes, the greatest love stories are those that survive the hardest storms. The final chapter of Alexander and Elise's journey was filled with emotion, hope, and the promise of a new beginning. After all the pain, misunderstandings, and years apart, they were finally ready to face the future together. But as with any real love story, their reunion was not a simple, perfect fairy tale. It was a story of patience, forgiveness, and learning to trust again. Elise's heart was still cautious. Even though she had forgiven Alexander and felt the warmth of his love, the memory of the past lingered like a shadow. She worried about what the future held. Would the dangers from Alexander's family business return? Would their love survive the challenges ahead? These questions kept her awake many nights, but she knew that love required bravery. Alexander understood Elise's fears deeply. He had spent years living in hiding, afraid not only for himself, but especially for her. Now, more than ever, he wanted to protect her and give her the life she deserved. The man who once avoided commitment was ready to build a life with Elise, grounded in honesty and respect. Their relationship grew stronger as they spent more time together, not just as lovers but as partners facing the world side by side. They shared dreams and made plans, not just about their wedding but about the life they wanted to build. They talked about traveling, starting a family, and living in a peaceful home filled with love and laughter. As they prepared for their wedding, the community that once doubted Alexander began to support them. Many who had once whispered behind Elise's back now celebrated her courage and strength. They saw the love between Alexander and Elise was real and genuine. The couple had become a symbol of hope and resilience for many. The wedding was a beautiful and simple event, unlike the grand celebration they had originally planned years before. This time it was personal and meaningful, filled with close friends, family, and those who truly cared for them. The ceremony was held outdoors, in a small garden surrounded by flowers and sunlight. Elise wore a simple dress that reflected her free spirit, and Alexander looked proud and peaceful. During the ceremony, Alexander looked into Elise's eyes and spoke from his heart. He promised to be her partner through all of life's joys and challenges. He vowed to never run away again and to always protect her with all his strength. Elise, with tears in her eyes, promised to trust him and build a future together. No matter what. The day was filled with laughter, happy tears, and warm embraces. It was a new beginning, not just for Alexander and Elise, but for everyone who had believed in their love. The pain of the past still existed, but had become part of their story, a story of healing and second chances. After the wedding, life settled into a new rhythm. Alexander and Elise faced challenges, like any couple, but they faced them as a team. Alexander continued to rebuild his family business with honesty and integrity, making sure that no corruption or danger would harm their future. Elise pursued her passion for art, gaining recognition and inspiring others with her work. They also focused on giving back to the community. Their foundation helped many people who had faced betrayal, abandonment, and loss. Alexander and Elise shared their story openly, encouraging others to believe in the power of love and forgiveness. Their home became a place of warmth and happiness. Friends often visited, children laughed in the garden, and the walls were filled with Elise's beautiful paintings. Alexander found peace in the simple moments, cooking dinner together, walking hand in hand, and dreaming about the future. One of the most important lessons they learned was the power of communication. They talked openly about their fears, hopes, and feelings, never letting silence grow between them. This honesty built a strong foundation of trust that helped their love grow deeper each day. Elise sometimes thought about the years they had lost. She wondered how different life would have been if Alexander had not run away that day. But she never blamed him anymore. Instead, she felt grateful for their journey, the good and the bad, that had led them back to each other. Alexander often reflected on his mistakes and the pain he caused. He knew that love was not just about grand gestures, but about being present, patient, and kind every single day. He promised himself to never take Elise's love for granted again. Their love story inspired many around them. Friends and neighbors admired their courage to forgive and rebuild. They became an example of how love can survive even the darkest storms if both hearts are willing to fight for it. Years passed, and Alexander and Elise grew old together, their love deepening like a beautiful melody. They celebrated anniversaries, traveled to places they had dreamed of, and created memories that filled their hearts with joy. Sometimes they would sit quietly together, holding hands and smiling, thankful for the journey that had brought them back. They knew their love was rare and precious, a treasure that had been tested but never broken. Their story was a reminder that life is full of unexpected twists and turns. Sometimes love requires waiting, forgiveness, and a brave heart. But when two people are truly meant to be, they find their way back to each other, no matter the obstacles. Alexander and Elise's journey was not just about winning back a lost love, it was about discovering the true meaning of love itself. A love that accepts flaws, embraces challenges, and grows stronger through forgiveness. As they faced the sunset of their lives, Alexander and Elise knew they had found something precious, something worth fighting for. Their love was a shining light, guiding them through every dark night and leading them to a future filled with hope, happiness, and endless possibilities. In the end, the billionaire who had once abandoned his bride at the altar had returned, not just to win back his wife, but to build a life together filled with trust, respect, and true love. And Elise, the woman who had survived heartbreak and found her own strength, had chosen to believe in love once more. Together, they showed the world that even after the deepest pain, love can heal, forgive, and create a beautiful new beginning.